You credited me in your book, and I appreciate you, Kenny. Thank you, buddy.
Did I spell the name right?
Yes, you did.
Good. Just wanted to make sure.
And I'm thankful for spelling my name right and giving me a credit in your book. I love you, Kenny. Say it back.
True story, though,
Say it
Robby.
back. Say I love you back right now.
I love you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love you, Robby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Grounds podcast featuring Robby and Uncle Paulie. I'm your host, Robby Ince-Mikowski, and my co-host is a man named Paul Hogan, retired City of Pittsburgh firefighter and now podcast extraordinaire. Hogan, what's happening, man?
Not much. How you been, brother? Haven't seen you in a while.
I know. Well, guess what? We got a great episode right now. What do you think, man? We're pretty excited.
We do. I know I am.
Yeah. So he's a good friend of mine. We spent time working together back at the NFL and Fox. In fact, I went from working with Pat Summerall to working with this man, and he is the record holder for most network television games called by a play-by-play announcer in American sports history. How cool is that?
That's pretty cool. They must both be proud.
That man's name is the one and only voice of the New York Knicks, New York Rangers, MLB on Fox, NFL on Fox, and the NHL on TNT. His name is Kenny Albert. Kenny, hello, my friend. Thank you for taking some time with us.
Great to be with you guys.
Kenny, you just came back from vacation, 10 days in Greece. How was that, buddy?
It was great. It's the end of a long stretch, beginning in September and going through the end of May, early June, where I'm probably on the road a lot more nights than I'm home. The years that we worked together, you knew what that schedule was all about. And it was nice to get away for 10 days with my wife, celebrating our 30th anniversary. So it was a definite change of pace. Like I said, September through May, absolutely crazy. And then the summer months, definitely a little quieter.
You know, you mentioned your lovely, beautiful, wonderful wife, Barbara, and two daughters, Amanda and Sydney. Kenny, this is amazing. Tell us about your family real quick. Your wife, Barbara, and your two daughters. One daughter went to Syracuse, and your other went where?
Graduated a little over a year ago from Wisconsin.
That's what I thought. Amanda and Sydney. How proud of Dad are you of your daughters, man? Two college graduates.
Two college graduates. It's hard to believe. I know you knew them when they were probably in nursery school, kindergarten, back in the day when we all worked together. But it does go fast. They're both doing really well. And like I said, celebrated our 30th. Well, we will celebrate our 30th anniversary this coming August. I always joke that I've been there for about 16 or 17 of those years, if you subtract the time away. But nobody understands my schedule better than the three of them. And we always made it work. I sort of had the opposite schedule of a lot of people who go to an office during the day, come home at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then are home on weekends. But we certainly made it work to our advantage.
Hogan, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
So Kenny used to have these July 4th barbecues at his house. You don't have them anymore, do you? You don't do those anymore, do you? I'm sure your schedule's a little too crazy.
Not necessarily on July 4th, but we got away from them for a number of years. The girls were away in summer camp, but we don't have the big July 4th anymore, but we do have a couple of barbecues every summer.
So Baldy and I, Brian Baldinger, his former broadcast partner, one of my best friends, we would jump on the New Jersey Turnpike and drive up and spend July 4th with Kenny and Barbara Albert and their kids and the rest of their family.
And one of the all-time highlights, we talk about this every year, was Baldy throwing all the kids off the diving board into the pool. They were all, a lot of their friends were here, so they were all between 3 and 5 years of age, and that was definitely an all-time highlight. Was Baldy up on the diving board, just one by one, throwing the kids into the pool.
He should have threw Robby in there, too.
Something that we'll certainly never forget. And some good basketball games, too, in the driveway.
I
think you might have taken part in a couple of those.
We played some intense basketball games in Kenny's driveway over the years. And Kenny's kid, man, your daughters, that was like 2003, 4, somewhere around there. Over 2 decades ago, we were doing this. So how old are your daughters now? Mid-20s probably?
26 and 23. They were born in 99 and 2003. So that was Amanda, my older one, and her friends were probably about 4 or 5 years old when they were getting thrown into the pool by Mr. Baldinger.
Amazing. Isn't that cool? Kenny, the USA Olympic gold medal games, both the men's and the women's. What was that experience like, and where does that rank for you in your career?
It was unbelievable. I've had the good fortune to work 7 Olympics in the winter. I've worked some Summer Olympics as well. But I've done hockey at the last 7 Winter Olympics, men's and women's. And I've worked several gold medal games before. A couple of differences. The men, of course, the NHL players were not there in 2018 and 2022. So it was mostly amateur players. So this was the first gold medal game that I worked on the men's side involving NHL players. And the level of play was obviously at the highest level. It was like watching all-star teams every game throughout the 2 weeks in Milan. On the women's side, I've had the good fortune to work the gold medal games in 2002 in Salt Lake, and then again in 2018 in Pyeongchang, and 2022 remotely from Stamford, Connecticut. So it was my 4th women's gold medal game, and the U.S. and Canada have dominated women's hockey. There was only one year where that was not the matchup in the gold medal game. That was back in 2006 when Sweden got there. So heading into these Olympics in Milan, you had the excitement of the NHL players returning on the men's side. You had the continuing rivalry on the women's side between the U.S. and Canada. And, then as the tournament started and it moved along, a lot of us were certainly hoping for USA-Canada matchup on the men's side as well. But, as you guys know, that came really close to not happening. The United States had to beat Sweden in overtime in the quarterfinals. If Sweden scores that next goal, the U.S. goes home without a medal. And then on Friday, both the U.S. and Canada still had to win their semifinal games, which they did. And that set up the matchup on Sunday. On the women's side, the U.S. dominated the game against Canada during the preliminary round. Canada had some key injuries in that game. And then the gold medal game was played on the last Thursday in Milan. And that went to overtime. And Megan Keller scored the game winner, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers have seen about 1,000 times by now.
About 10,000
The next day
times.
was the men's semis, and then we did the bronze medal game on Saturday and then the gold medal game on Sunday. The Olympics are like Groundhog's Day when you're there working. My first game was February 5th, and I worked every day, sometimes 2 games. I had 7 double headers during that stretch. So for a 17-day stretch, I worked 24 games between the men's and women's hockey. So you're kind of just taking it on a day-by-day basis. And once we finally did get to that USA-Canada matchup in the men's gold medal game, it started about 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Milan. We had just done the bronze medal game the night before. So you don't get a lot of sleep during an Olympics. You're preparing for the next day's games when you get back at about 1 in the morning. If I had 2 games, for example, in one day, I'd get back to the hotel late and then prepare for 1 or 2 games the next day. So it's a bit of a grind. It's great. There's nowhere else I would rather be during that time period. And then we all realized the magnitude of the U.S.-Canada game. The U.S., of course, had not won a gold medal in men's hockey since 1980 in Lake Placid. Canada was probably a slight favorite in the game. And, when you look at who they had on the ice, even when the United States scored the winning goal, it was Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Cale Makar. Unfortunately for Canada, they did not have Sidney Crosby in that game due to injury. But when I think back, it was one of the most magical experiences, no matter who won the game, even if Canada had won. Working with Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher and Catherine Tappan, I thought they were all at their best during that telecast, and it's amazing some of the things they pointed out and picked up on during the game. And then it goes to overtime, and Jack Hughes scores the game winner, and over 25 million people were watching. It was just an incredible day, an incredible 2 weeks. But to be involved in those 2 gold medal games was really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And, Robby, when you ask where it ranked among my all-time games, I've been fortunate to be involved in so many through the years. I've worked Stanley Cup Finals, 3 on the TV side, another 8 on the radio side. I've worked baseball playoffs. The Bautista game, the bat flip back in 2015 is one that I get asked about a lot. Our TNT crew was lucky enough to work the Alex Ovechkin record-breaking goal back in April of 25 for the Capitals. Too many football games to name, and you were with me for a number of them back in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Playoff games, worked a Pro Bowl, 5 or 6 college bowl games. I worked 1 Super Bowl, the international feed. But the 2 gold medal games right up there at the top of the list for sure.
That's all amazing. I don't even know how to follow that. How about that? That is amazing. Kenny, in 1994, I'm sure you had to discuss this a million times in your life, but 1994 was a great year for me. I was a senior at the prestigious Robert Morris University here in Pittsburgh. But I lived with 10 guys in a suite in 1994. 2 of them were from New York. So, of course, as you remember, the 94, that was Rangers Vancouver. And we everybody here in Pittsburgh, we still hated Adam Graves, right, for taking Lemieux out.
Who, by the way, might be the nicest person in the world. But of course, you're referring to the Splash.
Yes, we are, and I think we'll hate him forever for that. We'll hate him forever for that. But the Rangers come back. They win 4-3 in Game 7 of such a great Stanley Cup Finals. How does that rank for you? I know you called that game on the radio, which is kind of a cool story too. I hope you tell us. Versus what just happened to the Knicks this year. Who erased the ghost more?
Well, that Game 7 is right up there on my list as well. I mentioned all of the Stanley Cup Finals that I've been fortunate to work. For me personally, 1994 was a great year. I was hired along with a number of others by Fox Sports that year in March, April, May to work our first NFL season starting in September 94. And then about a week and a half before that Rangers Canucks series, I got the call to work the Stanley Cup Final on NHL radio if the Rangers win their Eastern Conference Final against the Devils. The great Howie Rose had called the Los Angeles-Montreal Final the year before on NHL radio, but he was the Rangers radio announcer, so if the Rangers advanced, they needed somebody else on the NHL radio side, so I had that opportunity. And then by virtue of the Rangers losing Game 5 to Vancouver, Robby mentioned my wife Barbara earlier, we actually met after Game 5 because the Rangers lost. If the Rangers had won, I probably would have stuck around for a Stanley Cup party. And Robby knows my good friend Jerry Coleman, our mutual friend, who's done radio in Baltimore for the last 30 years.
Yep.
They went to college together. Jerry and my wife went to college at Ithaca in upstate New York. And he happened to be in town doing some voiceovers in New York during that 94 Cup final between the Rangers and Canucks. So he had dinner that night with her and 2 of her friends, and I wound up going to their apartment basically to go see Jerry after the game. So if the Canucks don't come back and win Game 5, we never meet. So it's a crazy story. And then I had the opportunity to call Game 7 5 days later on June 14th. But during that same time, the Knicks were in the finals against the Rockets. And, of course, on that crazy Friday, June 17th, it was the Rangers parade in the afternoon, the Knicks-Rockets Game 5 at night, and the OJ chase out in Los Angeles.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
All on the same day. So a lot of memories from 1994.
On the same day?
On the same day?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There have been
the OJ
30 documentaries made about that day.
The
when the OJ chase was taking place, it was during the finals game, and NBC broke away from the game, and it was surreal. I was at the game, and all of a sudden, this car chase is up on the scoreboard. Nobody knew what was going on. There were, the internet was in its infancy.
I think that's on a 30 for 30.
No cell phones back then. And I think the U.S. Open, Arnold Palmer's last U.S. Open, took place that same weekend. So that was a part of it as well. When you compare it to the Knicks run this year, and I was away in Greece, as you mentioned, for the last 3 games of the NBA Finals, but, it did have that similar feel in New York. It's always great in the springtime when one of the teams advances deep into the playoffs, whether it's the Rangers, the Knicks. It's on the back page of the newspapers every day. You could just feel it around the city. The difference between 94 and this year was you had both teams go to the final, Stanley Cup Final and NBA Finals in 94. But the Knicks winning this year was the first time in 53 years since their 1973 championship. For the Rangers in 94, it was the first time in 54 years. So it definitely brought back a lot of memories.
Did you?
For the folks in New York.
So you're in Greece as the Knicks are playing the Spurs. What time of day is it in Greece? And are you following on your phone, or are you watching in your room through some kind of streaming device?
Game 3, we were flying, so I was not able to watch, but I was following on social media. Games 4 and 5 started at 3:30 in the morning in Greece, so no, I was not watching. Did wake up in the middle of the night during Game 4 and was checking out the score. That was the huge comeback from 29 points down. My girls were at the game, so they were texting us with updates. And then Game 5, again, started at 3:30 in the morning in Greece. So I found out the Knicks won the championship, and I found out the Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup the next day the same way by looking at my phone when I woke up, going to the NBA app, the NHL app, and that's literally how I found out about both championships this year.
From a guy who's called 3 Stanley Cup Finals on network television.
Oh, about that.
Isn't that insane?
Well, next year I'll be there. We rotate every year, TNT and ESPN. So we had it last year when Florida beat Edmonton.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have it again next year. But this year, had to check out the final score on the NHL app while in Greece on vacation.
You know what's crazy is this is how nuts we are in media these days. I was listening to Matthew and Brady Tkachuk's podcast, and guess who one of the guests was? Kenny Albert. Did you ever think you would see the day when the captain of a 2-time Stanley Cup – well, he's not the captain. Barkov's the captain. Excuse me. A star player on a 2-time back-to-back Stanley Cup champion, Matthew Tkachuk, asked the play-by-play guy to go on his podcast. Did you ever think you would see the day?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's always kind of surreal when it's a professional athlete interviewing you. I've had it happen on a number of occasions, but that was about 2 months after the Olympics, the gold medal games, so we both did a lot of reminiscing about that. He was asking me about some of the aspects of the broadcast, and we also talked about some of the Florida Panthers games that I worked, the one that went to 4 overtimes with Carolina. He scored the goal in the 4th overtime back in the Eastern Conference Final in 2023. So we had a lot of common ground, games that he played in and that I was in the booth for.
Which is amazing. And I'll tell you another crazy story. You talk about that day in 94. How about this one? And I'm honored, Kenny, by the way, to have you write a feature in my book, Sacred Grounds. You're featured in the book not once, but twice. And he talks about the Jose Bautista bat flip game, and he wrote a nice feature. And
well aware of that.
In that feature,
he just wasn't Pittsburgh Pirate material. We had to get rid of him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know, he's a long-suffering Pirates fan, Kenny. Paul is. He's lived through all of it, man.
I'll be one till the day I die.
It's amazing.
Yes.
He leaves the Pirates and just started hitting a billion bombs.
But that bat flip.
The bat flip, all of it. So this is what I wanted to talk about. In my book, Sacred Grounds, you tell a story about your parents. May 8th, 1964. It was before the second night game ever played at Shea Stadium. Okay? Marv Albert is a young pre- and post-game radio host for the New York Mets.
Okay.
And the Mets had these ladies, as fans entered the stadium, greeting people. They were called usherettes. Yep. Marv interviewed an usherette named Benita, who then got married, and one of their children's name is Kenny. How crazy a story. You were destined to be in sports, weren't you, Kenny, with your parents meeting before the first ever night game at Shea Stadium?
True story. I tell the story in your book. I told the story in my book, which was published in 2023, A Mike for All Seasons.
Mike, I was going to get there, yep. And you credited me in your book, and I appreciate you, Kenny. Thank you, buddy.
Did I spell the name right?
Yes, you did.
Good. Just wanted to make sure.
And I'm thankful for spelling my name right and giving me a credit in your book. I love you, Kenny. Say it back.
True story, though,
Say it
Robby.
back. Say I love you back right now.
I love you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love you, Robby. True story. So they met. Robby, you got all the facts correct there. He was doing a pregame show. This is 1964. He was about to turn 23, and she was not yet 20. And there's a crazy story behind it. My mother lived with her parents in Queens, probably 5 or 6 miles from Shea Stadium in Flushing, and she had to take a bus and a subway to get there. And she was only 19 at the time. My grandfather wasn't too thrilled with it, with her traveling alone to Shea Stadium at night, but she did it anyway. And when she went for the first game in April, I guess they had tryouts, and she was never necessarily told that she got the job as an usherette, but she just showed up the next day and took a uniform and started working. So then a month later, it's May 8th, the second night game, and they wanted to interview various folks who worked around the stadium, and She was one of the people brought up to the broadcast booth, and the rest is history. But if not for the Mets and Shea Stadium and so many other factors, I wouldn't be here chatting with you guys today.
You know what you should get? A tattoo of the Canucks, Rangers, and who are the Mets playing that day? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I probably
you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I don't remember, but no, it's crazy how these things work out, right? I mean,
it's amazing.
1964, they could have pulled any one of the other usherettes up into the booth, and then 30 years later, I meet my wife because the Canucks beat the Rangers in Game 5. It's incredible.
Isn't sports crazy?
It's amazing. Here's one other thing about the 1994 finals. In the series before the finals, Robby, I wonder if you know this. Kenny, I'll bet you do know this. Mark Messier made a Joe Namath-like prediction.
Oh, he did?
To win that. Do you know anything about that, Robby?
I don't know. He did? I wasn't sure.
Yes, he did. Scored a hat trick in Game 6. It was Game 6 or 7.
Game 6 against the Devils.
Game 6 scored.
And then Stefan Matteau. That was Sam Rosen, wasn't it?
And they were down 2-0.
That was the aforementioned Howie Rose.
Oh, it was Howie Rose. Wow.
So you could make an argument that they shouldn't have even been in that finals,
which is amazing.
Right, they were down 3-2.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mark, even though the front page of the tabloid said we will win tonight, his actual words were we will win tomorrow, because it was after practice on the off day, and my good friend John Giannone, who's the Rangers' terrific host and sideline reporter on MSG Network, he was one of the newspaper writers who wrote the story. He was there when Mark Messier said, we will win tomorrow. But then because the newspapers weren't published until the next morning, the headlines became, we'll win tonight.
That's unbelievable.
How about that? Now, Ovi's 895th goal, you called that, which was awesome. But one of the things I noticed most about that was right after he scored that goal, he takes a dive on the ice. Everybody goes crazy. They pan right to the great Wayne Gretzky, who was humble as can be, perfect gentleman. How cool is it for you to have him as a professional colleague, and how often do you remind him how lucky he is to work with you?
Well, first of all, getting back to the Ovechkin goal, it was so cool to be a part of it. And again, if he doesn't score that game, we're not a part of it. Our Turner crew happened to be assigned to that game when it became apparent that he was getting close. And then I'm in a hotel room 2 days before. I'm working a Knicks game in Atlanta on the Saturday, the day before the Capitals-Islanders game. And I'm watching the Capitals-Blackhawks game. At this point, Ovechkin's 2 away from tying, 3 away from breaking the record. So I was kind of hoping he would score one, at least one, so that he would be within 1 on the Sunday game. He scores either late in the first period or early in the second against the Blackhawks. Then he scores again to tie the record. So now my heart's pounding, because if he scores one more, that's it. He breaks the record, and our game is meaningless as far as the record goes.
Sure.
And I was thrilled that Ovechkin made the decision that he didn't want to break the record into an empty net. He had discussed it with his head coach, Spencer Carberry. So when Chicago pulled the goalie, he was not out there. His teammate Ryan Leonard winds up scoring his first NHL goal just out of college into the empty net. So now it's a 2-goal game. They put Spencer Knight back in, and Ovechkin has 3 great chances in the last minute. And fortunately for us and our crew, Spencer Knight stops all 3. So he's tied with Gretzky, and then, of course, breaks the record at UBS Arena on Sunday. To have Wayne as a colleague has been incredible over the last 5 years with the NHL on TNT. They're usually in the studio in Atlanta. We're out at the game site, but the studio crew does travel with us in the playoffs, either in the Stanley Cup Final, or if it's not a Cup Final year for us, they travel during the Conference Final. That was the case this year during the Carolina-Montreal series. And Robby, I know you got to know Wayne well during the time you spent out in Phoenix when he was coaching and part of the ownership group with the Coyotes. You won't find a nicer person. I was so fortunate to have Wayne write one of the forwards for my book, along with the great Walt Clyde Frazier. And there's really not a nicer, kinder person. And for someone who was the greatest in his sport all time, to act that way around everyone he meets, it just says so much about him as a person and his upbringing with his parents back in Brantford, Ontario. And whenever we get the opportunity to be around Wayne and listen to all of his stories, whether it's during the Cup Final or the Eastern Conference Final, just all very lucky to be a part of that, Robby, as I know you were back in the Phoenix days.
Yep. I try to describe this. I've explained this to Paul, and you obviously know, and I've been fortunate enough to have a pretty good friendship with Wayne. And I know I'm probably a name dropper saying that, right? Which, by the way, Gretz.
It's true, Paul. It's true. I've heard it from the other side.
Hey, Gretz, get on the show. That's my biggest call out. Gretz, somebody's going to send you this clip. Get on my show. All right? You hear me, Gretz? I call people out. I hope somebody sends it to them.
Well, I've been hearing the name drops for about 13 years.
Yeah. No, but I try to describe how Wayne is with people. He is so incredibly loyal. He's so incredibly generous. And he's so incredibly down to earth. When you're just sitting, hanging out, like having lunch, having breakfast, having dinner with him, he just loves to talk hockey and be around people. Like, is that an accurate way to describe him? Because
Absolutely.
He couldn't be any more
during the time that he spends around our crew, and
he's
Eddie
unbelievable.
Olszak,
He makes
Brian
sure
Boucher, Jackie Redmond, Liam McHugh, Paul Bissonnette, Anson Carter, Henrik Lundqvist. He just loves the camaraderie, loves telling stories, loves hearing stories, and it just never gets old.
And he'll say, "We're going to dinner," and then it's like, "Kenny, you're coming. All right, Ace, you're coming. Biz." Next thing you know, there's 12 people sitting at a table with him. That's just who he is, because he wants everybody to have a good time and be around him. I don't know how else to really describe the guy, because he's just so generous. And to have somebody that elite, one of the greatest athletes, arguably, you could argue he's the greatest athlete in the history of sports. You could. The discussion, I'm saying he's at least in the discussion.
You could.
Right?
Without a doubt, he's in the discussion.
And he's just so incredibly loyal and down to earth. I don't know how else to really describe him as a person, right? I mean, is there anything else you can really say about him? Signs every autograph. We were at the hotel.
Right. Never says no to an autograph, a photo.
Never. And I remember I went to go see you, Kenny, spend time with you, because I value your friendship and our friendship. Hopefully you feel the same way about me. I know you do. But I went down to hang out with Kenny. And these fans were outside, and they had asked Gretz for an autograph. He said, "I'll come back." And as we had finished lunch, he's like, "Oh my God, I forgot about those two guys." And he walked back out and signed for those guys.
Really?
How many superstars at that level would do that?
Almost none.
That's how he is. All right.
Almost none.
Speaking of superstars, and I do have a serious question for you, Kenny. You replaced Doc Emrick, but in a sense, nobody really replaces a famous announcer, because you're not Doc Emrick. Similar when you look at regional television. As far as team announcers go, Joe Davis is not Vin Scully. Nobody wants to be the guy after a guy. But Kenny, for you to step in and fill Doc's shoes to a level that I don't know that many fans felt they could do, what was it like taking that job? And was there any extra pressure getting the main seat, calling the Stanley Cup Finals? Because Doc Emrick, in my opinion, is one of the greatest sports announcers in the history of sports to ever live.
I agree, and I refer to Doc as the Vince Scully of hockey. He was tremendous. He's been a good friend for over 40 years and a colleague. We worked several Olympics together. We worked at NBC for many years together. But I never really thought about the pressure of replacing Doc. I think everyone is their own person, and you have to go do your job to your best ability. I certainly learned a lot from Doc, as well as many other play-by-play announcers in all sports. I went through a similar situation with the Rangers. I did the radio for 29 years and then moved over to the TV side to replace the great Sam Rosen when he retired. But I never really think about that as far as trying to be someone else or replacing someone else or standing in their shoes. I received a great opportunity early on at Fox Sports, as I mentioned earlier, back in 1994, when they decided to hire a number of young play-by-play announcers. Joe Buck, Tom Brenneman, Kevin Harlan, and I were all hired as part of that rookie class at Fox in 1994. And I'm just, so appreciative of the opportunity, but also so proud of all of the others, Hall of Fame broadcasters themselves, and the fact that they're all still working at such a high level. To be part of that group is very special too.
Kenny, and that says a lot about all of you. You just mentioned some of these names. I'm going to mention last names of famous announcers: Buck, Albert, Brenneman, Carey, Eagle, and I'm sure there's a lot more. Talking about Ian Eagle and Noah Eagle. And when I see this, the first thing fans say is nepotism. That's the obvious thing that fans say. And then you spend time around these guys and you see a level of preparation that is unmatched. These people carve their own paths. It's not nepotism why these people are great at their jobs.
What do I say to you all the time, Robby? I talk about preparation, how difficult it must be. And I say this all the time, Kenny, is for a hockey announcer, it's got to be more different than baseball or even football or especially hoops. You got to memorize every player on every other team, and then in real time in hockey when it doesn't stop and just know everything and get it perfect. It's really impressive.
Well, I appreciate it, Paul. To me, hockey's the easiest. I know people won't believe that when they hear it due to the names and the fact that it's nonstop and they're changing on the fly. But for the 60 minutes, you're just calling the game, especially on radio when you have to describe everything. On TV, you could pull back a little bit. But to me, hockey's like riding a bike. To get back to Robby's previous point, I think what the average fan or viewer may not think about or realize or understand when you talk about Joe Buck, Tom Brenneman, Chip Carey, Noah Eagle you mentioned.
Yep.
We all learned so much via osmosis, by tagging along, by being around. It was such a head start as far as the learning process because we're watching the preparation, the hours that go into it. We were able to sit in the broadcast booth and watch the communication between the play-by-play announcer and the color analyst, the play-by-play announcer and the production people in the truck. It's more than anything you could have learned in school. And I'm not, not putting down what we all learned in school because that was invaluable as well. But it's similar to a doctor who might have kids who go on to medical school, or a lawyer whose kids become lawyers, or really any profession, just by being around it as a youngster. And like I said, watching the preparation, watching what goes into it, you just learn so much and definitely have a head start as far as the knowledge and everything that goes into it.
Well, you mentioned Doc Emrick as a generational guy. Generations come, the new ones come in. I think right now it'd be a safe play to say that Kenny Albert is this generation's Doc Emrick.
No doubt.
Without a doubt.
No doubt.
So there's that.
You can't take that lightly, right? When people look at you and they see you calling a Stanley Cup Finals, they see you calling the NFL on Fox, MLB on Fox, calling big games. I mean, what kind of pride do you take in your career advancement, Kenny?
I mean, sometimes it's hard to believe when I look at the list of things that I've been fortunate enough to work or hear them mentioned as you just did. I think back to the 2 years I spent in the American Hockey League with the Baltimore Skipjacks, calling the games on radio and doing any other task in the office, whether it was PR, marketing, sales. And those were 2 unbelievable years. I wouldn't trade those in for anything. I learned so much, and trying to get to the next level at that point, which was the NHL. And then some of the opportunities that came about when Rupert Murdoch makes this crazy bid for the NFC package late in '93, and the 4 of us, who I mentioned moments ago, get this crazy opportunity at such a young age to call NFL games. And then I was hired by Home Team Sports in Washington to do the Capitals on TV and also fill in on Orioles baseball and Bullets basketball at the time, now the Wizards, and worked a lot of college basketball and some other sports. So just the opportunities through the years. I'll even go back to my high school days when I was writing for the school newspaper and the town newspaper on Long Island. And when I was in 10th grade, Cox Cable from a neighboring town showed up at my high school to film a girls' basketball game. And our athletic director, who I was friendly with, introduced me to the producer. And they did not have any announcers that game, so I volunteered. They clipped a mic onto my shirt. I called the game and spoke to him on the phone the next day. And he gave me the opportunity during my 2.5 remaining years in high school to call about 75 or 100 games all over Long Island, college games, high school games, and I would bring friends along as color analysts. And that was, unbelievable experience, getting the reps 3 years ahead of other kids my age who might not get the opportunity until college. So when I think back about the time that I put in back then, the hours, the studying, the internet didn't exist. I had to write letters to athletic departments at high school and colleges just to get rosters and information, but it was all worth it. It was all part of the process. And now, all these years later, to listen to some of the The various sports and leagues that you mentioned, Robbie, and the Stanley Cup Final and 10 Olympics now, and baseball playoffs, basketball with Walt Clyde Frazier for so many years, and 32 years, over 500 games with the NFL on Fox. It's really hard to believe.
Speaking of career memories, and we don't talk politics on the show, but we have to mention November 9th, 2025, the Detroit Lions were playing a game in Washington against the Commanders, and you were calling the game along with your broadcast partner, Jonathan Vilma, producer Fran Morrison, a sicko. Fran, I love Fran Morrison. He's a whack job, but I love him.
Producing a World Cup game as we speak.
I'm not surprised. Good friend of mine. I shouldn't say my good friend of ours who we worked with at Fox for a number of years. He's a producer for the NFL on Fox.
One of the best.
Amongst other things. One of the greatest human beings.
Did
hilarious.
I meet him in Tampa Bay last year?
Yes, you did. We were hanging out at the hotel with Fran. Paul did meet Fran last year. Remember we took that picture with Baldy's pinky? We imitated Baldy's pinky, Kenny. How do you describe Baldy's pinky? Like working with his pinky?
How many pictures do you think that pinky's in through the years?
Oh my God.
10,000.
He could do a 30 for 30 on Baldy's pinky.
Okay.
All right, hold on. Here's my – all right. So we're in the booth. Donald Trump. And we're not here to talk about politics or who likes or dislikes Donald Trump, but it's more the fact that you had a sitting United States president in the booth with you. What was that experience like?
He was there for 8.5 minutes. We didn't know how long it was going to be. We were told it would be either one or two drives. And, of course, a drive could be 3 and out. And it turns out the Commanders had a pretty long touchdown drive. When I think back to the last year and a half or so, and we've talked about some of these events, but starting last April, calling the Ovechkin goal, and then the Stanley Cup Final, and then our football crew during this past season, we had a game in Madrid, we had a game in London, we had the president in the booth with us for that 8.5 minute interview during the Commanders-Lions game, and then a couple of months later, the Olympics to call the gold medal games involving both the men and women, on the hockey side. It's really, it's been a crazy year and a half. It really has.
Sure has.
But, when I was preparing for the interview, there was going to be a game going on, obviously, while the interview was taking place. So it was mostly about football. We couldn't ignore the game. We had to pay attention to what was going on the field. And we did talk a little bit about his high school football career.
Remember that? For
New York Military Academy. We talked about whether he was a Giants or a Jets fan as a youngster growing up in New York. And then the first thing that came to mind when I was approached about the interview, when I was told that he was going to be joining us, is Ronald Reagan and the fact that he was a sportscaster back in the day before he became an actor and then governor of California. And I remembered watching Reagan in the booth with Vin Scully during a baseball all-star game on NBC.
The home run.
And he actually called a Bo Jackson home run. Okay. So one of the things that I said during the interview was, Ronald Reagan was a sportscaster back in the day. Do you want to call a play? Do you want to give it a try? And we actually sort of called a play together with the Commanders, heading in. They were inside the red zone at that point. So, like I said, very fortunate to be involved in so many different sports with various networks. And when I think back to the last year, that was certainly a memorable day, along with the Ovechkin goal, the Stanley Cup Final, the games in Madrid and London, and then the Olympics in Milan for 2.5 weeks.
You can read Dan Plesac, who was an all-star that year when Bo Jackson hit that homer. In the booth was Ronald Reagan with Vin Scully when Bo Jackson hit that moonshot 500-something feet. That story is in the book Sacred Grounds. Dan Plesac.
And I remember it was back-to-back home runs, and I can't recall who hit the first one, and then when Bo Jackson hit the second of the back-to-back, President Reagan's line was something to the effect of, "That one looks like it's going there too." And I distinctly remember watching that and listening, as a teenager back home.
Kenny, I want to tell you about one of the great honors of my life. I spent the 2002 season working as a spotter for Pat Summerall. Brian Baldinger was kind enough to get me into the Fox family, along with Fran Morrison, Barry Landis, Rich Russo. There's a list, Pete Macheska. There's a list that goes on and on. We're going to talk about you and Pete and your honors in a minute here.
Pete Macheska just inducted into the National Polish American Sports Hall of Fame last week.
Do I have a chance, Kenny?
Media Award.
Do you think I have a chance? I'm betting hell no.
I think you got a good shot.
You know what's crazy? One of the great honors of my life is spending a season working with Pat Summerall, which was my first full season in working in television as a spotter. The next year, Baldy gets partnered with Kenny, and I become Kenny's spotter the next year. So I went from working to Pat Summerall to working with you, and really it was like the Harvard grad school of broadcasting. And obviously I had a great friendship with Pat, have a wonderful friendship with you. And what was kind of surreal about all this, Kenny, was that in 2009, you and I were at Angel Stadium, and it was a Friday night game with the Saturday game going to be on MLB on Fox, and I had a chance to interview you for that series. That was pretty cool, man. Like, I don't know how to really describe it, but to get from being Kenny Spotter to getting an on-air job was kind of cool. Like, what is that like for you watching people, not necessarily me specifically, but there are many that you know that work in the business that have dreams and have aspirations, and to help people like me grow along in the business? What kind of, how much do you think it's your role and responsibility to kind of give back a little bit to the younger generation? Because you're a real accessible guy.
Absolutely. I mean, we were all so proud of you when you went from the truck, from the behind-the-scenes positions to on-air jobs in Phoenix and Minnesota and Pittsburgh, and I might be leaving out a city or two.
No, you got it all.
But, we always got a kick out of turning on the TV and watching you do your thing. But one of the chapters in my book is all about paying it forward and giving advice to young sportscasters out there, high school, college age. And every summer I speak at 2 or 3 or 4 sportscasting camps here in the New York, New Jersey area. Bruce Beck, the longtime great WNBC sports anchor, he runs a camp every summer, and Ian Eagle used to be involved with that as well. And Jeremy Treatman runs the play-by-play camps out of Philadelphia all over the country. So in 2 weeks, I'll be speaking at both those camps, and did one for a long time at Hofstra University. And some of the former campers have on-air jobs now. So it's always fun hearing from them and seeing their progress. But I hear from people all the time, high school, college broadcasting students, and sometimes during the season when I'm really busy, it's tough to listen to all of the samples that they send me. But when I have some quieter time like I do now, definitely going through some of them and giving advice and helping out as much as I can, because I think back to so many people who helped me out back in the day and try to pay that forward.
I have a feature from Kenny in my book. I have a feature from Joe Buck, Matt Vasgersian, right? 3 major names in the game of baseball. And all 3 guys picked up the phone right away, got right back to me when I asked them to do it. How would you describe that to fans, Kenny? The level of accessibility that even though people see you and they look at you, you're a network TV voice, you're the network TV record holder in American sports, but you're always a phone call or a text away from most people. And that kind of goes for all those guys, even though there are demands on your schedule and it's hard to get back right away. But I feel like that's almost kind of a responsibility that is kind of inherent for these broadcasters to do that kind of stuff. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Sure. I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but on a personal level, you have to remember where you came from. And I think back often to those days calling high school games and then calling games in college at NYU, and my years with the Baltimore Skipjacks and how many people lent advice and helped out along the way. We talked about Howie Rose earlier. I was his associate producer for 3 years on Mets Extra back in '87 through the early part of the '90s season. And I was with Howie at Shea Stadium for every Mets home game, and I would help set up guests. I would grab a writer out of the press box. I would have to go down to the Mets clubhouse after the game and put the headset on a Darryl Strawberry or a Doc Gooden or any of the other Mets superstars at the time, and just learned so much by being in the booth, by watching Howie at his craft. And even though it wasn't play-by-play at the time, he was hosting a pre- and post-game show. Just learned so much from him and so many others that I was fortunate to spend time around through the years. I did a lot of stat work back in high school and college as well. So worked with so many different announcers and took a little bit from each and every one of them.
Winding down here with Kenny Albert, who's one of the all-time great human beings in broadcasting. Kenny, back on April 25th, it was Game 4 between the Penguins and Flyers, first round of the playoffs. It was Kenny's 1,545th national broadcast that he did. Now, that's across football, basketball, baseball, hockey. Have you ever done network TV basketball, Kenny? I don't think you have you?
No, I have done a couple of college games on network TV. Worked one with the great Fran Morrison this past November, UConn, Illinois at MSG. But there's actually a gentleman in the Midwest named Tony Miller who keeps track of these things, and you can check it out on Twitter. Unnecessary Sports Research is the name of the site. And he has these incredible databases where he keeps track of how many games announcers work on a national level. So that number for me would be national hockey, NFL, and national baseball games. And it's obviously an honor to be right at the top of that list in North America, the combined list. But there are many. I mean, if I include my local hockey games with the Rangers and basketball with the Knicks, the number's probably over, I would say, 4,000. And the minor league games that I did back in the day and the Washington Capitals. Wow. Baseball broadcasters do 162 games every year. So they would certainly, many of them, be well into the 3,000 and 4,000s. But it's always so much fun to look at that list. I think on the NFL, I'm 5th or 6th. Kevin Harlan and I are right around the same number. And, as you would expect, it's the Pat Summeralls, the Al Michaels, the Dick Stocktons, right at the top of that list. Don Criqui as far as play-by-play. So, again, it's really surreal to look at those numbers and hard to imagine that, some of us could be up there on these lists with the all-time greats.
Maybe when he accomplishes something in his career, we'll have him back on. Maybe when he calls it a network TV.
One last fun question, Kenny. How did the water polo happen in the Olympics?
I just lost the audio, Paul.
Did we freeze? Is Kenny frozen on us,
Kenny,
perhaps?
I think if you can see us, you're frozen right now on the TV.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll work through the technical difficulties.
You guys are frozen. I don't know if you can hear me.
What an amazing story that this is right now in terms of, think about 1,545 network TV games. That's just network TV.
Well, I wonder if that makes him the number one in the world, if he's the number one in North America.
Yeah, I would think so. And also, I wanted to mention to him the 2026 Sports Emmy Silver Circle Award that he won along with Pete Machesko, who's a longtime producer who I had a chance to work with as well. He was the producer for Pat Summerall and Brian Baldinger when they were partners, and Pete then became a producer. Kenny, I think you're back with us here. Can you hear us okay, brother? Yep. So as we're wrapping up, Kenny, we're wrapping up here with Kenny Albert. But, Kenny, I don't know if you've had a chance yet to look back on your career, but to have that honor, how does something like that resonate with you to be the all-time record holder for most network TV broadcasts called in the history of American sports?
Yeah, it's crazy to look at those numbers, and I've obviously been doing it now for 32, 33 plus years on the national level. And by the way, don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So, those numbers will get even higher. But, just have to credit so many great people that I've worked with, both in the booth with me and in the production truck, because it really is a team. It's a family whenever you do a broadcast. So I know the people watching or listening at home, they're only hearing 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 voices. But on an NFL game on a Sunday, there are 75 to 100 people involved to get that broadcast on the air. So there's a lot more that goes into it aside from just the announcers that you hear and see.
Paul, you got anything else? I think I'm good, man. We discussed enough with Kenny. This is amazing.
Plenty. This was fantastic.
Kenny, man, I'm going to tell you something. I appreciate you so much, my friend. You're a good man.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It's a lot of fun. As I said, Robby, we're all proud of you whenever we see you out there on the air, and the book's tremendous. Great job with that as well. So really enjoy chatting with you guys, and let's do it again soon.
By the way, how I don't know if anybody's ever referred to Kenny as this, but his roommate when he was with the Baltimore Skipjacks, roommate on the road, was Barry Trotz, former NHL head coach.
I did know that.
Stanley Cup winning head coach. Kenny's roommate with the Baltimore Skipjacks. How about that? What are the odds?
I did know about Barry Trotz.
That's crazy. Kenny, thanks, man.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Paul,
Kenny.
Take us out, brother.
All right, we're going out again. For my good friend Kenny Albert and my great friend of 13 years, Robby and Smokowski, I'm Uncle Paulie Hogan with the Sacred Grounds podcast. We'll see you next week.